It is human nature to want to share our stories with one another and to see ourselves in the stories that we read. Literature is one of the most powerful mediums for learning about ourselves, learning about each other, and learning about the world around us. Since the time of ancient Greece, literature has featured queer themes and characters, like Achilles and Patroclus in the 5th century tragedy The Myrmidons and the 6th century lesbian poetry by Sappho. Although much of this ancient literature was lost, queer stories continued to appear even into the Renaissance. Despite the church's disapproval, the Renaissance saw the publication of tons of queer works, like Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron in the 14th century, which was so explicitly gay that it was censored heavily in later translations. Even in the centuries where being gay was completely illegal, authors continued to publish their queer works, like Matthew Lewis's The Monk in 1796, or Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla in 1872, or Ian Forster's Maurice in 1914. The existence of literature representing queer characters and their relationships, even when it was completely illegal, shows us that desire to be seen authentically has been a part of life for thousands of years. And yet, even to this day, queer characters are underrepresented in literature, and more recently we've seen an increase in calls to completely ban queer books altogether. This lack of representation and acceptance is extremely damaging to queer people, both for their mental health and for their relationships with others. In a survey by the Trevor Project, over 75% of LGBT people reported emotional difficulties relating to their identity, and 43% of LGBT youth had seriously considered suicide, especially if they were transgender. In school, 86% of queer youth reported being harassed or assaulted by their peers. Many queer people don't even have a safe home to retreat to, with only 40% of LGBT people reporting that their home was accepting of who they are. I grew up in Tennessee, where being queer was something shameful that you didn't really talk about openly. I had a lot of mental health struggles, and I didn't really have a way to talk about that because even I didn't understand what I was going through. Unfortunately, that's a really common experience for a lot of gay people. I didn't read my first novel with gay characters in it until I was in college. It was in my young adult literature class. It's called Lillian Duncan. One of the main characters is this trans girl who is going through her own sort of identity crisis and figuring out who she is and who she wants to be and just finding her place in the world. And that really, really resonated with me. It inspired me to go find other books that spoke to me in that way, which were more often than not about transgender characters, and wouldn't have been about a year later that I came out and started my own transition. I've recommended this book so many times to people trying to understand my experience a little better. I think it can be really hard to describe gender dysphoria if it's not something that you experience yourself. The people that I've recommended Lillian Duncan to have told me that they feel like they understand where I'm coming from a little better. And I think that's what it's all about. Queer stories are all about connection. Connecting with yourself when you read, connecting with others by telling your story, and connecting to the lives of people who don't live the same way you do. So, let's talk about how literature makes you more empathetic to others and to yourself, and why you should read more queer stories. You know that feeling when you're reading a book and one of the characters just absolutely misread a situation and overreacted, and you just get so uncomfortable and embarrassed with them that you just feel like folding in on yourself and hiding? You're not in that situation. You're probably just sitting at home under your blankets with nobody else around. But that feeling of embarrassment, it feels so real, like it actually is you that messed up. Reading has a way of sucking you in, of taking you away from your actual life and fully transporting you into the world on the page. When we're reading, we are actively setting aside our own lives and choosing to step into the mind or world of someone else entirely. Whether we realize it or not, we are taking in the character's thoughts and experiences and considering their point of view alongside or even instead of our own. This phenomenon isn't just our perception either. It's been proven in medical studies about how we engage with what we read. In 2015, Natalie Phillips used an fMRI machine to study which parts of the brain activated while we're reading. The study found that our brains activate not only in the areas that process words, but also in areas related to what was happening in the story. For example, the reader's olfactory bulbs activated when the character was describing something they smelled. The motor cortex of the reader would activate when the character was running or doing something active. This study shows on a biological level that readers connect to a character's experiences directly, and the contents of the story have a tangible effect on us. On an emotional level, this connection to fictional characters serves as an exercise in empathy. It creates new understandings of the perspectives of people from any number of backgrounds. A 2013 study about reading fiction and the development of empathy found that readers who engaged with detailed narratives displayed an emotional connection to what they had read, both immediately after reading and in their follow-up a week later. As the researchers state, quote, "Fiction presents a simulation of real-world problems and therefore has real consequences for the reader." Although in a real-world context, the act of engaging with or learning about marginalized communities can seem really overwhelming, reading queer stories is one of the best first steps that you can take to understanding what our lives are like. Reading queer narratives allows you to experience our thoughts and feelings privately, without any social pressures or tensions for you or for anybody else. It also allows you to think through what you're reading at your own pace, and to carry those lessons with you even after you put the book down. With all of this in mind, reading queer books can connect you to the queer experience both consciously and unconsciously. These narratives allow you to see the actual day-to-day lives of LGBTQ+ people. They serve to normalize our experiences and create a safer and more accepting world for queer people everywhere. In the words of author Mohsen Zaidi, quote, "Stories help shape cultures, and if you hear no stories about something that is a part of you, then, to my mind, that part of you can't possibly develop and mature at the same pace as the rest," end quote. Queer people often feel like they fall outside of the norms of society and are unseen and unwanted in day-to-day life. We've all seen the gay marriage debates, the trans debates, the drag bans, you name it. Our current social climate is simultaneously more accepting than ever before, and yet increasingly hostile to our community. Reading books in which queer people see themselves reflected allows them to feel normal and explore the unique aspects of their lives in a way that is validating and empowering. After all, when you're struggling with something that you've never seen or heard anyone else talk about, it's easy to feel like you're the only one who feels that way. That kind of isolation takes a toll, both on a person's self-esteem and their ability to feel like they belong. The only real means of addressing this type of isolation is to talk about it. Queer literature is a beacon of hope, a way of understanding, truly, that we are not alone. As author Laura Kay describes on her blog, quote, "For a lot of queer people, having a crush on someone is still something wrapped up in confusion, isolation, unnecessary secrecy because of perceived or real danger." In writing queer love stories such as The Split, Laura realized, quote, "The crushes I write in my novels now, from the office romances to the epic love stories, are for teenage me, looking for queerness on pages where there wasn't any, searching for myself and coming up blank," end quote. Another queer author, Michael Aielli, agrees. In his own blog post, he writes, quote, "If I had access to these stories as a young person, I would have been spared a lot of strife. I may have come out sooner. I might have dodged some familial conflict. I would have pressed into my queer joy earlier." And that's the thing. Queer literature reminds us that our existence is not just suffering. Queer stories remind us that our lives are full of beautiful moments, and that we should celebrate and be celebrated for what makes us unique. As Aielli writes, quote, "Sharing queer stories widely affirms, validates, and rejoices in our varied and nuanced experiences. LGBTQ+ literature reminds us that there is hope, that there is belonging and joy in our lives." On Laura Kay's blog, she quotes a reader who explains that they read her queer love stories because, quote, "We all want to see ourselves in art, and we all want a happy ending for ourselves, so seeking that out in fiction just seems intuitive," end quote. Queer literature is a means of sharing that joy, of erasing long-held shame and fear and celebrating who we are. As Michael Aielli writes on his blog, quote, "Books provide a safe space to explore and wonder and dream. They let us try on situations and provide a quiet space to ask our most private questions. Queer narratives give us as readers access to understanding aspects of life that we may not otherwise know how to process, whether you're queer or not. Studies have shown that reading expands your ability to empathize with others and that it allows you to practice a way of thinking that you wouldn't otherwise. Engaging with queer stories is vital not only for the well-being of the LGBT community itself, but also to bring our experiences to those looking to understand our lives a little better. After all, sharing and connecting is the most human desire of all. Whether your goal is to better understand the people around you, or if you're seeking comfort and community within the narrative, queer literature is absolutely the best place to start. Mohsen Zaidi says it best, quote, "That's the importance of queer reading. It nurtures you and helps every part of you grow." If you want an excellent first queer novel to start with, I can't recommend Lillian Duncan enough. Especially if you're a parent wanting to understand what it's like to be young and transgender, Donna Gephardt does a great job of writing an authentic representation of what it feels like to be coming to terms with your gender identity. Lily's dad is also a great character, and I think you will really resonate with his character arc in coming to terms with his daughter coming out and transitioning. If you're looking for more of a queer romance novel, I recommend the book Carry On. It's a magical coming of age with a queer main character who wrestles with his identity as the chosen one, and it details him falling in love with his school rival Baz. The story has some really good commentary on coming out and shame, especially with the love interest Baz and his character arc. And it just has a great message about self-love and, coming to terms with who you are and finding yourself all within a larger-than-life fantasy story. If neither of those are up your alley, I will include a link in the description to the Penguin Random House's Ultimate Pride book list. It has books of any genre, any topic, anything that you could possibly desire, and I highly recommend checking it out and finding the right book for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, share with your friends, and I will see you guys in the next one.